All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I have been going over some programmatic examples from our textbook, JavaScript 6th edition by Sasha Vodnik and Don Gosselin. And for chapters 1 through 6, I had been using a simple miles per gallon program where I did a lot of functionality that went on in that particular chapter. All right, then I skipped chapter 7 because we're not going to really be going over that in class. For chapter 8, the program that I used, the miles per gallon, was not really conducive to allowing us to put in a lot of string and array examples. So what I did instead was I went out to javascript.io and grabbed their paper, so to speak, on arrays and their paper on strings and did presentations on those. I'm not covering chapters 9, 10, or 11, other than the fact that, again, I've already done lectures on the PowerPoints. So that brings us to chapter 12, jQuery. So I've got this program working, and it looks pretty much the way that it did in the past. All right, so I can come in here and I can put in non-numeric, and I get the message non-numeric. I can reset it. I can put in values that are out of range. And I can do that, and I can reset it. All right. You may or may not have noticed this because I put a little bit of a delay in there so you could see it. But if I put in something non-numeric, and I click calculate, watch what happens to the values after about 5 seconds. They disappear. And I'll show you how I did that in just a minute. In the same way, if I put in things that are out of range, the message changes, but again, after approximately 5 seconds, boom, the values disappear. And again, I'll show you how I did that in just a minute. If we do put in something valid, we get our answer in here. Okay, just like we did before, and we put the cursor back here, so we're ready to try it again if we want to, and we can click reset. So it's pretty much working the way it did before, but as much as possible, I tried to write it using, just using all jQuery. And it gave me a couple trials and tribulations while I was doing it, so I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to talk to you about those now. So let's take a look. And really, I don't think I changed a lick in the CSS. I think everything is exactly the same, so I'm not going to do anything with that. In the in our form file, I didn't want these to be number fields. I made them text fields because that way people can put bad input into them and the program should handle it. Okay? That's the only reason I did it. All right, I changed my message here. This, up till about here, I believe is exactly the same. All right. I did give the asterisk here its own ID for the miles and for the gallons. Because remember, when you're working with jQuery, one of the easiest ways to work with jQuery is to work with class selectors, which is what I did. All right. I believe everything else in here was the same other than that. So what I want to do is just concentrate on the differences. Again, I put the use strict up here, which is going to make JavaScript be a little bit more restrictive. All right. And I tried to comment the wazoo out of the program. Hopefully it looks like it. Not a real long program, 135 lines. Okay. But actually what I should do, and I want to do it now because otherwise I'm going to forget to. And that is, I want to grab all this. That's fine. And I want to add it to here. And I'll make a comment later, but it'll basically just say new for version 6. The program was redone using jQuery. All right. So we still have our constants as we did before. I set my program variables here, and these are actually global. because I've set them outside of any routine. And I didn't want to worry about passing things back and forth. I tried to, again, keep it in a way that at least I thought made as much sense as possible. Let me move these over. You can read it now. So I've got miles, which is the value in this miles-driven text box. So it's that value there. Let me blow this up a bit. Okay, so that's the value that's there. Then I've got gallons, which, as you would guess, is the value that's there. All right. Whoops. Then I've got miles flag. I guess I never made an MPG variable, which I probably should have done. Hopefully I'll do that and won't break the program. Calculated miles per gallon variable. Okay. All right. Then I have a thing called miles flag and a thing called gallons flag. And they're Boolean flags, so they will hold the value true or false. And if the miles driven value that I put in here is valid, then the miles driven flag will be true. If the otherwise it's false. If the value I put in here is valid, so for here it's got to be between 1 and 1,000, and here between 1 and 50. So if that second value is valid, I'll accept the value, and my Boolean flag called gallons used flag will be true. Otherwise, it will be false. Okay, gallons flag and miles flag, I guess is what they are. All right, so again, this literally says when I click whatever it is that's got an ID of calculate. Well, what has an ID of calculate? What you think it would? The button, the calculate button. So when I click the calculate button, attempt to parse the values that are in those text boxes. All right, and if you can parse them correctly, the value will go into here for miles driven and here for gallons used. If not, NaN for not a number will be put in there. Okay, then call the function to validate the miles. And what does that do? All right, it first checks to see whether or not the input was non-numeric. If the input is non-numeric, I know I put garbage in there. So I told it to set a timer, and basically after 5 seconds, which is 5,000 milliseconds, have whatever value is in that text box disappear. Bring in the text into our area, that span area that originally just had the red asterisk in it, and have it say non-numeric input must be between, or must be 1 to 1,000, and set my flag to false. I do the same exact thing if it's out of range, except the message is different. Instead of saying non-numeric input, it says out of range input. But in both cases, it then sets the flag to false. If we get down to here, then the value is okay. So I don't want to put anything into my span, and I want to set the flag to true. So the flag is either going to be false because there's nothing in there, or it's non-numeric, or it's going to be false because I put an out of range value. And if either one of these two conditions are true, I wait 5 seconds and clear out the value. And I set the miles flag to false. All right? Otherwise, I set it to true. So this, after I get done calling this, that flag is either going to be true or it's going to be false. Then I do the same thing with gallons. And it's written exactly the same way, except what I'm checking now are gallons. So if gallons is not numeric, wait 5 seconds, clear out the value, set my error message and my span accordingly, set my flag to false. Otherwise, if it's out of range, I'm doing the same thing as up above, except again, setting the timer, but again, instead of having a message that says non-numeric, it says out of range. And just like above, I'm setting my flag to false. If I get down to the bottom, the value that I put in there was valid. So I set the error span to nothing, to the empty string, just like I set it to nothing right here. All right, and I set my flag to true. All right, if both flags are true, that's what this means. If both those flags are set to true, then what do I want to do? Well, then I want to set the value of MPG. That value right there is from right here, and that value that's right there is this value that's in here. I can't click in there because I've disabled it. All right? So I'm telling it the value for that to be the result of the calculate function, which simply returns the miles driven divided by the gallons used to 2 decimal places. That's it. All right? So when the reset button is clicked, it's very simple. I say I want the values in all three of my text boxes. Whoops, so the values that are in all of these, all those values, I want them to clear out. That's the first thing I want to have happen. Then I want the 2 spans. So remember, those spans could have been set to something else. So again, if there's nothing in there. So what am I going to do when I click reset? I want this to clear out, I want this to clear out, I want this to clear out, and I want those asterisks to come back. And that's exactly what happens. All right, and that's exactly what I'm explaining right there. Then I set the focus to my miles field, and that's it. So that's the whole routine. Again, I tried to put a lot of comments in there. I may or may not have succeeded, and it's amazing because I've been lecturing on this for 12 minutes, but I probably spent a good close to an hour working on this, just tweaking it and trying to get it to look better and better. So my constants, my variables, again, there's what's called when the calculate button is clicked. So if you ever watch this and want to take a look, you can just pause the video right here and take a look and see what this says. All right, then check our flags. So that whole function goes from here to here. All right. There's our calculate function. Pretty darn simple. There's our reset button or clear function right there. Pretty simple. This set the focus to the miles program. Program. When the program starts, don't set it to the miles program, set it to the miles driven text box. When the program starts, that's what that's doing. And then again, we validate the miles as I showed you before. So you first check for non-numeric input. If the input is non-numeric, you set a timer to have that non-numeric value disappear from that text box after 5 seconds. You set the error span message stuff and you set the flag. If it gets down to here, the value was numeric, but it still can be out of range. So if it is out of range, meaning it's either less than 1 or it's greater than 1,000, we again set a timeout to have that disappear after 5 seconds. We set our error text span message and we set our flag. If we get down to the final else, so there is an if, which checks for non-numeric, an else if, which checks for numeric but out of range, and an else, which handles the valid case. So I don't want to put anything in my error span because it was valid. All right? So in the other 2 cases, I set the miles flag to false here and here. But if I get down to the bottom, it's valid, so I set the miles flag to true. And again, is valid gallons works the same way. If I enter something non-numeric into gallons, I set my timer for 5 seconds, boom, have the value disappear, set my error text, set my gallons flag to false. If I enter an out of range value, so a value that's less than 1 or greater than 50 for gallons, I again have that bad value disappear after 5 seconds. I have different text. This was non-numeric, but this is out of range. All right. and I set my Boolean flag. If I get down, so again, this is non-numeric, this is numeric but out of range, and this is numeric and in range. So if I get down to that one, it's numeric and it's in range, so I want to set my error span text to the empty string. There's no error. And I want to set my associated Boolean flag to true. So one last time to run this, I come in here. If I leave it all blank, I get my error messages, and boom. Probably should have gone back and reset the focus here, but that's okay. All right, so put in something non-numeric, nothing changes. Put in something that's out of range. The message should change here. And it does not. Probably a bug in my program. It catches it there. That's out of range. All right. Oh, okay. And it disappeared. So if I put in, let's try it now. All right. And it disappears. So let's put out of range again. Just see if that was an anomaly that I didn't wait long enough, and it looks like it was. All right. When they're both valid, I get a valid amount in there. This goes away. When I click reset, this value will disappear, this value will disappear, this value will disappear, and my asterisks will come back. Boom. All right, so what I want to show you is what I have done now. I think I've got it in here yet. No, I don't want to do it from there. Yeah, I can do it from there. Is what I have in here now, after I get done producing what we're watching here. There'll be 85 videos. And what I have done, and this was in the wrong order, so I was going to reorder these. Because the chapter was on strings and arrays, not on arrays and strings. So, okay. So, what I have in here right now is I first went over all 14 of the chapters in the Terry Felk Morris book. A couple of them have 2 lectures. Most have only 1. You can see the length of each presentation over here too. After I went over those lectures, and like I said, there's about 17 of them for the 14 chapters. Okay? Then I went over one of the case studies at the end of the chapter. So chapter 2 had a case study, 3 had a case study, 4 did, 6 did, 7 did, 8 did, 9 did, 11 did, 12 did, 13 did, and 14 did. So I have about 10 presentations on there. Then I actually gave you some intro stuff, and now that I look at that with this this fundamental stuff, you might even want to start there. That's always up to you. And these were just some fundamental lectures I did on HTML fundamentals. Okay? Then I did the same thing. Now that I look at that, I will move this down, but I'll do it later. I did the same thing with CSS. So CSS fundamentals, parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then I went through from the other textbook where it says VG. That means Vodnik Gosling, because that's the book. So I went through all of the PowerPoints for chapters 1 through 12. Again, some of them were 2 parts, some of them were 1 part. Then I did the miles per gallon program, which I'm just finishing up now. So chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 had 3 lectures. Chapter 4, chapter 5 and 6 had 2 lectures. Chapter 8 had 3 lectures on strings and 3 lectures on arrays. and then the Chapter 12 one will go right in here on jQuery. Then I went through some jQuery fundamentals. And that brings us up to, after I get done with this video, 85 videos. So what am I going to do next? Well, the only other part of the class to go here is to talk about Bootstrap. Now, if you go out to getbootstrap.com, which is the main Bootstrap site, all right, this is currently showing 3.3, but I wanted to show you the newest. So I wanted to show you Bootstrap 4. Whether that's right or not, that's what I've decided to do. So I'm going to first come in and talk about how to download and set up Bootstrap, and also what's in the help here. All right, so I'm going to talk about that. Then I tried to look for what I considered to be a good tutorial on Bootstrap, and I found one that I think at least is good, and it's under quackit.com. And I know it's in here because I've seen it already, so it's in here someplace. Bootstrap tutorial. And I want the one, see there's a Bootstrap 3, but I want the one on Bootstrap 4 because that's the newest tutorial. All right? So I'm going to go over all of this stuff. Now if you look, there's 1, 2, well there's the getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 32 of these presentations. I'm not going to do a lecture for each one, so I'll combine some of them as I see fit. Then you'll notice there's some Bootstrap 4 examples, quite a few. And I'm going to go over a bunch of them also. All right? After I get done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a few lectures that I did for my class last year. So fall of 2016, I'm going to add them, and it builds a landing page. So it's going to sound a little different because it's actually in an in-class atmosphere. When I get done with all that, then I'm going to start building the website. I will build the website and have 3 versions. The first version, for lack of better words, I'm going to call a minimalist version. And what I mean is it's going to have the minimum as far as HTML, as far as JavaScript, as far as CSS. It'll look fine. It'll work fine. Okay? And I'll try to remember to put some responsiveness in it, and I'll do that using media queries. Okay? Then in the second version, we'll really pretty it up a little bit. We'll add some jQuery. Ideally, we're going to add a slideshow on our main page, etc. Then for the third version, we're going to take that site that now looks pretty nice, and we're going to bootstrap it. So that's what you've got to look forward to. All right? See you soon.